Hey there, everyone. It is Cynthia with Pacific Wine and Spirits. Welcome to my living room for your at-home video tasting series number 7. I'm happy to be here. Wish I could be in person, but, well, that can't happen. So here I am. Today, we are going to be discussing wines from New Zealand. Woo! We'll be talking a little bit about, well, what they're known for, Sauvignon Blanc, and we'll also be talking about other grape varietals that are grown in the region. We'll talk a little bit about history and these fabulous wines from both Greywacke and Nautilus wineries. Let's see. Let's start with, as I mentioned, I'm with Pacific Wine and Spirits. It is Alberta owned and operated, family owned and operated, based right here in Edmonton, has been for about 50 years. So that's pretty cool. And I've been with the company 8 years, this week actually. And it's the agency's job. I'm the middleman in between the vineyard and the point of sale. So it's my job to introduce new wines to retail stores and then come out and do things like this and educate. So thank you so much for joining me. Okay, back to New Zealand. So let's see. The first vines planted in New Zealand was in 1819. So a long time ago, right? But, I mean, nothing really happened for over 100 years. There was, let's see, they had some issues in the 1800s with lots of rotting issues with the vines, and then the bug phylloxera, the louse, came in the late 1800s and decimated all the vineyards, but it decimated the vineyards worldwide. So for those of you that don't know, it's phylloxera is this little louse that actually came from America and decimated pretty much every single vineyard in the entire world. It ate the rootstock and the vines couldn't grow. They tried ripping them up, and then when they replanted, it would just happen all over again. So they actually finally had to graft American rootstock on to the original rootstock, and that helped the problem. So that was in the late 1800s. Just a little bit of history for you. And then there was Prohibition in the early 1900s, so that kind of put a damper on, wineries. And then there was a boom around the Second World War with New Zealand wineries. Government started changing their import and export laws and started opening them up a little bit more. But let's fast forward, so that nothing really happened for a long time, put it that way. And then in the 1980s, they discovered that Sauvignon Blanc grows really, really well in the region. So back in the 80s, I think I think in 83 there was 5 registered wineries. 5. That's it. So you got to think that's not that long. And then by the 90s there was 70 wineries, and then to date, just to give you a little spectrum on how much it's grown, they're busting at the seams at almost 700 wineries in New Zealand. So New Zealand is 2 islands. There's a northern island and the southern island. There's approximately 8 growing regions. There's sub-regions within those regions, but for all intents and purposes, we'll just say 8. It's about 1,000, it's about 1,000, miles, north to south. And of all the plantings, 80% of that are white grape varietals. Of that, 60% is Sauvignon Blanc, what they're known for and what they're really good at making. But they export so much. Of that, 80% is exported. Their main export markets are pretty much tied at 30% each. UK, US, Australia. Canada is in fourth, but only at about 5%. So we still do like our New Zealand wines. But on the scale of volume, New Zealand is about 16th in volume for the largest wine producer. They produce about 300 million liters per year. When you compare that to Bordeaux, so Bordeaux is a tiny little region in France, they produce 700 million liters per year. So just to kind of put that into perspective. Ever since New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc hit the market, it has grown in popularity exponentially. People love that zippy, zesty, high acidity, kind of grassy grapefruit flavor that seemed to hit the market, and it's doing really well. It definitely put them on the map, that's for sure. It's a good thing, but it's a bad thing too. Now, when I say it's a bad thing, what's bad about it is that people don't realize that it's such a awesome growing region that there's other grape varietals that are grown there. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, because we have a beautiful Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir to taste through today. So that's pretty exciting. It's a good way to kind of try new wines from a region that you might really enjoy. The value of New Zealand wines has also grown insanely. So back in the 90s, like value-wise, export-wise, they were producing making about 18 million a year, the wine industry in New Zealand. In 2020, any guesses what it's at now? How much it's grown? 2 billion, over $2 billion. So sorry, been cooped up. Yeah, so it's grown crazy. As I mentioned, there's about 8 growing regions in New Zealand. We're going to focus on the main one today. The main one is Marlborough. So Marlborough is their #1 growing region. You'll see it on most labels that they state Marlborough. 70% of the wine in all of New Zealand is grown in the Marlborough region. And of that, 60% is Sauvignon Blanc. Seeing a trend here, right? So there is also, I guess, second would be Hawke's Bay. So Hawke's Bay is on the Northern Island, and that's the warmest growing area in New Zealand. So that's home to Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah. Those grape varietals, they need a little bit more heat, whereas Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Pinot Noir are great cool weather grapes. Now, when I say cool weather, we're not talking Canada, like we're not talking northern Alberta here, like not that cool, but a cool, what we call a maritime climate. So maritime climate is long sunshine hours, tons of sunshine, but it doesn't get hot. It typically does not exceed 30 degrees. And so you get those nice long ripening hours. So the grapes are all able to evenly ripen from the sunshine. Sorry. Let's see. All right. Well, might as well start tasting some wines. First of all, let's start with Grey Wacky. So Grey Wacky is the name itself is Maori for the stones, the river rocks that are found everywhere throughout New Zealand. And they're very, very, very well known. They're these smooth rocks. The winery is owned by Kevin Judd and his wife Kimberly. Kevin has been in the wine industry in New Zealand since 1983, where he joined Cloudy Bay, also another very prolific winery and well-known winery in New Zealand, and he was the head winemaker there for 25 years. So he knows how to make wine. He also has a parallel career in photography, wine photography. He has 2 books out, and all of his labels and everything, that's actually photographs that he's done. So he's in publications worldwide for his photos on in vineyards. It's really cool. Anyways, so he started at Cloudy Bay in 1983. Cloudy Bay was the 5th, I believe it was the 5th winery registered in New Zealand. Yeah. And then in 1993, he decided to just register the Grey Wacky name. He thought he was going to register it. He was going to use it someday. Well, his dreams came true in 2009. So the winery has been around since 2009. They make the Sauvignon Blanc here. They also make a wild Sauvignon Blanc. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a sec. A Pinot Noir, a Pinot Gris, and a Chardonnay. We have the Sauvignon Blanc here in market, so we'll talk about that today. You're going to hear me say the word textural. These wines have a lot of texture all throughout them, because they do. These are artisanal wineries, and their flavors they're not one-dimensional. There is a lot of love and care that goes into making these wines, and they're not your everyday wines. These are very, very special. And when I say textural, I mean layered flavor. There is a lot going on in these wines. So I'm excited that you're here to try them. So the grapes that are picked for the Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc come from Marlborough region in the southern valleys. He picks grapes from 2 different sites in 2 different valleys. One is a Water, which is a little bit cooler, so it can produce a little more of those vegetal flavors, green pepper, pea pod, fresh cut grass. That is indicative with the Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. And then Wairua, I hope I pronounced that right, Wairua Vineyard, or Valley, which is a tiny bit warmer, which produces more tropical notes in this Sauvignon Blanc, and then he blends the 2 at the end, and so you kind of get the best of both worlds. This one, I find, you do have that grassy gooseberry notes to it, but you definitely get some tropical notes as well. Peaches, melon. There's also like a creaminess to it, almost like a lemon sponge cake, I would say. Mm. Whew. Yep. A New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is very distinctive. You can definitely pick them out, especially in a blind taste test. They're very distinctive. So typically Sauvignon Blanc doesn't see an oak barrel. Kevin does put a small fraction of this in an oak barrel. But he doesn't use new oak, just used oak, and so it just gives it a little more texture, a little more flavor. I think that's where kind of that creaminess comes from. What else? Serving temperature. So typically in North America, we serve our white wines too cold and our red wines too warm. I would recommend serving the Sauvignon Blanc probably at 7 to 10 degrees. I think 7 might be a little cool for my liking, but it's entirely up to you. It's a pretty acidic wine, and so you want to keep the temperature nice and cool to keep that acidity at bay. So maybe throw it in the fridge about an hour, a little over an hour before you're going to open it and have it with dinner. As I mentioned, there's a lot going on with this wine. I would pair it with, if I was to pair it, lobster with butter. Oh my gosh. Definitely, that'd be a great pairing. The acidity in this one is really high, but it begs for food. So the idea when you're pairing food and wine, you want one to complement the other. So every bite that you take, then you have a sip of wine after, and you want your palate to be refreshed. Well, this definitely does it. That's for sure. As I mentioned, Kevin also makes a wild Sauvignon Blanc. Now, what that means is that he uses wild yeast. So there's controlled yeast that's made, and you can kind of tell the outcome of what's going to happen, essentially. And then when you use wild yeast, it's a whole new ballgame. The winemaker doesn't necessarily know what could happen. So we also maybe keep your eye out for that in the market, because that's a whole nother flavor profile. It's a really cool Sauvignon Blanc. But yeah, there's the Grey Wacky. Next, we're staying in the Marlborough region for the next two. However, we're switching grape varieties. They make a fabulous Chardonnay. So next we are going to Nautilus Winery. So Nautilus is family owned and operated. They were one of the original wineries. It was built in 1985 by the Hill Smith family. The Nautilus is in they're in the family of 12 wineries. So it's essentially all family owned and operated wineries got together, and they're competitors, but they work together for the greater good of New Zealand wine. They work on things such as promoting their wines and the region, and sustainability is very important to them as well. So that's the Nautilus family. So the Nautilus symbol itself, the Nautilus is the shell, and it's the oldest living creature in the ocean, as far as they know anyways. And it's known because it's a symbol of order amidst chaos, essentially. It's a symbol of grace and precision, and it's mathematically perfect for something that nature made. So Nautilus really captures that. They precisely make their wines. So yeah, that's the Nautilus shop. As I mentioned, in the 80s, there was less than 70 vineyards in the area. So they were one of the first, as I mentioned, and now there's almost 700. They pick their grapes from 6 estate vineyards. Now, when I say estate, what I mean is they own the vineyard, which is awesome because they're able to control every aspect of what goes into cultivating and growing the grape varietals. Therefore, they are certified sustainable, and they are vegan, vegetarian friendly. What else? These are also very, very textural, food friendly. They beg for food, these wines. Yeah, so the Chardonnay. Oh, and the winemaker is Clive Jones. He's been with the winery since 1998. I'll be showing you a brief video at the very end of this, and he's going to give you a couple-minute tour of the facility, because I thought you might as well hear it right from him. Let's see. So Chardonnay serving temperature should be around 12 degrees, so a little bit warmer than the Sauvignon Blanc. I'd probably throw it in the fridge maybe an hour before you're about to drink it. This is the 2018 vintage. It was harvested in March. The grapes were all hand-picked, so not machine harvested or anything, so a lot of love and care was going into them. It was aged in French barrels, not a lot of new. I think it was 20% new barrels, but that gives it a really beautiful creamy texture quality to it. When I smell this wine, I smell nectarines and toasted almonds. That oak gives it a nice toasty quality that's absolutely beautiful. I love this Chardonnay. So You know, some Chardonnays from the States, they're big, oaky, buttery Chardonnays. And then some Chardonnays from, say, France are unoaked. So they're a little bit more clean and astringent. Well, I find that Nautilus is perfect. You get kind of the best of both worlds. There is a little creamy butteriness to it, but but it's so well balanced and it's beautiful. If I was to pair this with something, definitely some sort of Alfredo. It's almost dinner time, so I'm talking a lot about food. Yeah, definitely some sort of creamy Alfredo pasta sauce I think would be fantastic with this. And then next up we have the Nautilus, the Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, well, and Sauvignon Blanc. So they all originated in France. Sauvignon Blanc from the Bordeaux region, and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from Burgundy and Champagne region. These are all, as I mentioned earlier, cool climate grapes. Pinot Noir is really hard to grow. It's called the heartbreak grape. It needs a long ripening season. Oh, that smells good. So what else? Oh, Nautilus built the first ever Pinot Noir dedicated facility back in 2000, I believe. It was the first facility of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere, actually. So that's also really neat. To me, it smells like a bowl of spicy, fresh picked blackberries. Yeah, that's really nice. My favorite pairing with Pinot Noir, definitely mushroom risotto. Definitely. I love a good mushroom risotto with a Pinot Noir. Pinot Noirs typically, to me, have a little kind of a mushroom hint of mushrooms when you smell it. Just a little bit, but not in a bad way. But then you get the bright cherry blackberries on the nose. It's a beautiful balance. As I mentioned, these all would pair. They all beg to be paired with food. Yeah. So that is that's the Pinot Noir. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. This Chardonnay, the only place to get it in the city is Liquor Select. So I am so excited to showcase this one. I never get to showcase this one. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you for tasting with me. I'm gonna show you the quick video, and then I'll be back. Enjoy.
G'day, my name's Clive Jones. I'm the winemaker here at Nautilus Estate, and we're going to do a little tour. So behind us here we've got what we call our front end, and this is where all the white grapes come in to be processed. So we've got the two big presses there, tipping tanks, receival bin, fairly standard sort of operation, but one that's very, very efficient. So follow me. Right, so here is our barrel rooms, and so in here we've got all our Chardonnay that's fermenting away, going natural fermentation, just being pressed directly in the barrel on full solids and brewing away. So let's have a look. So here we are in the white cellar. We've got a variety of different sized tanks. Behind us some 30,000 litre tanks. Each one of those tanks will hold 3,000 cases of wine. We've got a few barrels here of Sauvignon. They've finished fermenting, so they're just maturing in barrel. Follow me. So here we have a tank of 2020 vintage Sauvignon Blanc that's brewing away, fermenting away. Nice and active in there, which is great. That's probably got about another week before it finishes fermentation. So as well as fermenting Sauvignon in stainless steel tanks, we also ferment in these large format oak vessels. So we've got a fooder here, which is 1800 litres, about 200 cases of wine, and we've got a cuve, which is the upright, and that's 3000 litres, or about 300 cases of wine. In here we have the laboratory, which is where we check all the ferments, make sure everything's working okay and testing all right. Okay, so here we are in our dedicated Pinot Noir cellar. We've got our own little press here just for Pinot, and behind me we've also got a crusher destemmer and part of the sorting line there, and then we've also got the last of the barrels to be filled tomorrow, so then all the Pinot Noir will be safely tucked away in barrel. So this Pinot cellar was built in 2000, so 20 years old now, and one of the first dedicated Pinot Noir cellars built in New Zealand and in fact the Southern Hemisphere. So let's come have a look. Okay, so here we have our 16 open top fermenters arranged in a U-shape. So as little as a week ago they were all full, but now they've all been drained and pressed, and you can see the barrels behind us which are all full of Pinot. So they'll be maturing there for essentially the best part of the next year. Behind me is our punch down device, which is used to manage the caps and manage extraction. One of my favourite pieces of kit in the whole winery, just sitting here behind me. Okay, so here we have some 2020 Pinot. If we look, this barrel was filled on the 12th of April, and it's from our Clay Hills block 5 in fact. So if we have a look inside, all filled up with nice 2020 Pinot. This wine's going to sit in this barrel pretty much undisturbed until February, March next year.
Thank you, Clive, for that cool little video. Always nice to see it directly, hey? Anyways, just wanted to conclude this tasting and say thank you so much again for your time. I hope it was informative and I hope you learned a little bit. Thank you to Liquor Select for having me. And if you would like these wines, they are all available at Liquor Select. The Grey Wacky Sauvignon Blanc is $32.75. The Nautilus Chardonnay, once again, Liquor Select is the only place in the city that has it. It is $34.75. And the beautiful Nautilus Pinot Noir is $44. If you decide to buy all three together, then you get 15% off, and it is 10% off the shelf price until May 14th. So once again, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you in person, maybe sometime soon. Okay, bye!